a photo of, almost as if it was like a photo of a nebula or something like that. So it gives a sense of, I don't know what the term would be, a sense of wonder or place. There is a weird thing going on in the top third, top right. There's like a straight line. I just noticed as I'm looking at that. So I would check that out. I think that might be some kind of cloning error, or I don't, maybe it's an actual seam in granite. I don't know exactly what it is. So.
And the maker is Daniel Chaplin. And this is snow on leafless branches.
Abstract. I like the contrast and of the light and the dark with the snow. I think that the true nature of the abstract is not to know so much of what the subject is. I think that there's maybe could have made this a little stronger as an abstract with, some closer in shots of some of the snow and the branches. There's some interesting shapes in here that I think it's a nice wide photo. I think it might have been nicer if it was a little tighter in some of the areas with the abstract, and maybe a little more focus control. There's definitely an area in the middle area that's better focused, but it was a nice image.
The photographer is Dave Arstein. This is when reality seems abstract.
I've always really enjoyed shots like this, where it's, long distance hills that become, I think when nature becomes abstract, I think that's super interesting. So it's really like textures. It's almost like a watercolor, like brush strokes from, one side to the other. So I think it works really well. I wonder, I was kind of looking at, like, the sky is not as critical to this. And I don't know if either taking some out of the sky, like trimming, cropping off the top, and or actually showing more sky. Obviously, we don't necessarily want to put the horizon line across the exact center unless there's a real reason to do so. We try to avoid that usually. But I feel like the sky itself is probably not as interesting as the foreground. And that's what's so cool in drawing us in. You could try giving it a little bit more black, maybe a little more clarity, one of those. It might even pop a little bit more, but I think it's a super strong image. I like it a lot.
The photographer is Tom Quinn. And that ends abstract. And now we go to architecture. First one is Conservatory of Flowers.
Well, no doubt this is a very interesting architectural building. Maybe we have the category is architecture, but we have a lot around it. I think it's such an interesting building. Maybe just a little more close-up photos of the structure itself to emphasize the category of architecture. But it's well exposed. The exposures work well, and it's very hard to get that white building and so that and to blend well with everything around it. But I'd like to see it a little more of the building itself in the particular category of architecture.
The maker is Suzanne Hamilton. And this is Oracle Window Reflections.
So this one, I feel like I had a little bit more trouble because it kind of was like a little bit abstract, a little bit architecture. It was just tough figuring out exactly where the subject started, because unfortunately, we can kind of see that what I assume to be the photographer kind of down in the bottom right. So I like the reflection thing, and I like the wavy nature of it, and I like that it sort of becomes a triptych. You could even trim off just a touch off the left, so get rid of that other seam, and then it really does feel like a triptych. I think it's got a great color palette. And it is like really blurring the lines of architecture and abstract because of that weird like reflection thing. Maybe take a little bit off the bottom so you get rid of the photographer and that car or crane or whatever that is, because it's really that you can't see my hands. It's that top 2/3 that to me is the most interesting part. And yeah, and then you got these couple of little lights that are a little bit distracting. So, if it's art anyways, clone them out. They're not helping things. So, and I don't think you're actually really changing reality. If you'd stepped to the right or left or turned off the light switch, they would have disappeared anyways. So.
And the photographer is Jeff Alstetter. This is Nevada City Surprise.
I like the sky and the shapes and of the roof and the spire in the back. I think that there's additional elements in here in the shadow areas that would be nice if we could have brought some of that out to add, because you have the diagonal lines of the stair, of the handrails leading into it, and there are all sorts of shapes and whatnot in this shot. So because right now with the loss of the detail in the lower part, all of the focus is on the roof and the temple. Maybe that's what you meant to be, and if so, then maybe we could crop out some of the lower areas. But it looks like there's stuff on the bottom that might be interesting too.
Can I just add, I would agree with David on that. This is one of my favorites in the whole batch. And I also liked, it had a feel of an old Kodachrome slide. It has a little bit of that yellowish, warmish, tone to it, which I thought was kind of cool.
Okay. And the photographer is Jim Bear. And now we're in the fauna category. This is Manta in the Maldives.
I've never gotten to photograph them, so this is like the best I've ever seen. It's pretty cool. I like it a lot. I like that it was treated with black and white as opposed to color, because it's way more about the shape and the form rather than the something being colorful or not, or something like that. I would say I would try moving it up in the frame. Like hopefully you have more frame space around it, that this is cropped, because and it may not work, but it's worth trying. It just seems like he's going to swim off the frame versus being up towards the top, swimming into the frame. And yeah, it looks like it's almost like a board, it's like a blend or a bordering on something being, metal and industrial, like an airplane. Makes me definitely think of an airplane or something natural. And I think that's kind of cool. That's blurring that line.
Did we lose the screen share of the image?
No.
No?
I can see it.
Oh, you can see it. How come I don't? Post disabled participant screen sharing.
What?
I don't see the image anymore. It disappeared.
Is anybody else having a problem?
No, I see it.
You see it?
I see
I
it.
can see it.
How come I don't see it?
I see it, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
good too.
Looking good.
Just you, David.
It's just
it's
you.
me?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Do you want to start your Zoom again? Or
No.
is it hidden under somewhere?
I don't know.
Close
All of a sudden I saw Josh and I didn't see the image. It just disappeared from me.
Well, you could have seen Josh if you expanded the speaker view when Josh was speaking.
Well, Kathy, he did say it sounded like sharing had stopped. Can you reshare, David?
No.
Oh? Oh,
He
maybe,
needs to- it's from his end,
You want to
Douglas.
sign in and sign back out?
Yeah, why don't you
Maybe-
come back in?
all right, I'll leave and come back and maybe Josh can.
I'll do a couple, and when you come
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you have
all
some
right.
jokes, Josh? You could entertain us for a few minutes here.
Well,
I
actually,
can
this
tell you some
next
really
one-
great dad, sixth
Dad
grade.
jokes?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we actually have one that Josh can talk about here.
Yeah,
This
I'll
is
just keep
called-
going, and then when David comes back, we'll get him back in. So
Yeah,
That's-
this is
it's actually nice
Costa
tag team.
Rica.
yeah, so hummingbirds. You saw I talked a lot about it. This is the challenge. of photographing them, outside in the bright sun is that you end up with these like bright spots often, and there's not a lot you can do about it except trying to photograph them when they're in the shade and the background is in the shade as well. Because this is not an easy photograph to get, right? Because you're like, unless you know exactly where they're going to go, you're like chasing them around, and and the longer your lens, the harder that is. So, this is a very difficult photo, to create. I think the biggest thing that would help is if this was shot in full shade, and you could still get a fast enough shutter speed, then you'd be able to maybe get a little bit more of that iridescent, get rid of the harsh bright spots and harsh dark spots. If we had more time, I'd be interested to know what lens it was used, because the background has some real circles in it, and maybe moving away from the background could blur more of that out too. Sorry, I went long, sorry.
That's all right. And maybe the photographer will tell you, and that's Bernadette Sylvester. This is capturing horsing around.
All right, I'm back. Should I take this one, or?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
Or is this yours, Josh?
it's all yours, go for it.
Oh, okay. I hope I haven't taken this out of sequence. Anyway, I like this one. I like the narrow depth of field, especially, so that the focus, is on you really get this feeling of the sense of action on, especially with the left horses and the fading to the soft background. I'm thinking there's a lot of space between the two left horses and the one on the right. I don't know if I wouldn't have just focused on the action of the two horses there, because there's so much distance between those two and the ones on the right. But it's a wonderful shot of action and horses playing.
And the photographer is Shelby Cohen. This is Do You See What I See? Cayman Lizard, Amazon Basin.
So one thing I would notice straight away is it's got really nice, like sharp focus. We've got I think it's really nice that we're like looking through grass. So it's like giving a sense of place, and it's like, in a sense, creating a story beyond just the animal. Because otherwise, the outside edges could be distracting. The one challenge is that the grass is like right in front of the eye. There's the two that are crossing right in front of the nostrils, and then the one in front of his left eye, the one on our right. That would be the only thing. If he was peeking through and we had just a little better view of him, I think that it would be stronger. So the challenge with wildlife photography and horses, like the last one, is they don't listen. Shooting with like human models is nice because you can ask them to move to the right, to the left, do whatever. And they do it usually if you've done a good job. So this is not an easy thing to like get him in the right place or move your camera without scaring him.
And the photographer is Ann Westling. This is I Have to Do This.
This is a great action shot of this leopard, I guess, and the prey. I think the focus of this is all right in that left upper quadrant of the stare of the leopard and the eyes of the prey, and the big paw on the deer's hindquarters. And I'm not so sure the rest of it really contributes as much as I like the fact that we see the whole body of the leopard. Maybe it's more like a pano, but that clearly, I think it could even be more powerful if the photographer had us focus on that stare and the big paw. And it's just like, I hate to see what the next shot was.
True. Well, Janice will have to tell us about it. The photographer is Janice Rossner. This is Gold Crown Sparrow.
I think this photo works really well. This is a difference kind of, between the hummingbird we talked about earlier, because it's in this open shade. There's no harsh shadows, things like that. I think you've got a really interesting perch, with this old like wagon wheel looking thing. Maybe getting the bird a little more in the bottom left, so he's not quite so centered, but he's looking into the frame, which works really well. And if you push him bottom left, then you're losing out on some of that wagon wheel. So it's always like a compromise. Every photo is a compromise. The one thing would be, could you darken the background just a little bit? And now, like, with computer stuff, it's pretty easy to do. If the background was, say, a half a stop less bright, darker, whatever the exposure, I think the bird would pop a little bit more. And that's kind of the fun art side of photography, is like dodging and burning and things like that, instead of in a dark room on a computer.
And the photographer is Daniel Chaplin. This is I See You.
So I like this composition of just basically the branch and the bird with this. It's got a nice bokeh in the background, that nice softness to this particular lens. There's a nice little catch light in the bird's eye, and the tilt and the angle of the bird over towards the area of the negative space. I think it's a minimalist shot that works very effectively, and everything is in sharp focus, background's out of focus. What can I say?
And the photographer is Sheila Ryan Weintraub. This is Montana Redneck Grebes and Yummy Leech.
I thought it was a grebe, I just didn't know which one. These are such cool things to see, and I've never really had a lot of luck photographing them. My first thing, unfortunately, is that it's out of focus. It's front focused. If you look at the water in front of the birds, it seems like a little bit in front, they come in, the water becomes more in focus. So there is that issue. As far as the composition and the story, you could probably tip it up a little bit, or have a little more above, a little less below. The split where there's a dividing line in the reflection, that might help it compositionally a little bit. But you've got a really great story going on. I mean, you got the leech like in midair, about to be eaten. You've got, the baby, what I assume to be the mother, the parent. I don't actually know. But this interaction is super cute. It's a super strong photo with just, a little bit of stuff to work on.
And the maker is Willie Hall. This is Tiny Porch Frog iPhone macro.
So I really like the cropping around the eye and the head of this frog. I mean, that's where it all is, and you're taken right to it. There's a bit of soft vignetting around, and the photographer's really created what is the center of the heart of the photo. And I think all of the surrounding rocks and the shapes and whatnot help to lead your eye to the main part of the photographer wanted you to see. Nicely done.
And the photographer is Dave McClellan. Now we are in the flora category, and the first one is For My Valentine.
I think this is super cool. It could be a painting, I mean, it crosses or transcends like what medium it is, and it's way more about shape and form and lighting. It almost in some ways takes on a little bit of a human-esque curves and things like that. It's super well lit. I like that it like separates out from the background. I mean, it's super strong. I don't have a lot of critique. I mean, it's like, I assume to be studio done, and I would say better than my studio skills for sure.
And the maker is Suzanne Hamilton. This is Old Cemetery Oak.
So the angle and the tilting up of the camera that the photographer used makes this image completely. Could have shot it from further away, and maybe made the tree, more straight up and down. But I think having this lower angle really gives this the distortion that it gives this really a very artful sense to it. And I like the fact that the lighting is coming from the left. It's helping to emphasize the shadows. And I like that white kind of burl in the center, kind of, pulls your eye right to it. It almost has a sense of life though, with the angles of the limbs.
And the photographer is Eric Engels. This is Donner Summit.
My first impression of this was, I kind of thought like a bonsai tree. I like the look down on it. I think it could be a black and white, honestly. That was kind of my thought. Maybe just a tiny bit more space on the top. It just seems a little crowded. But a nice black and white with like good contrast and stuff, because it's more of a study of shape and texture than I think a study of color. I don't know that the color is necessary, and I think it's a strong image. This nice S curve through the frame, leading lines that are taking us, throughout the frame. It keeps the eye moving around in the frame rather than disappearing off into other things. So I would mess with the black and white thing.
And the photographer is Sheila Ryan Weintraub. We're now in natural landscape, and the first image is Serenity.
So I like the subjects here, and there's a strong sense of contrast between the rock and the water. The rock to me looks a little bit out of focus. It looks like there's more focus, I think, possibly elsewhere. I was thinking that there's a lot of water in back with the reflections not being so still. Maybe if the angle, if you came down on the angle, you could have a little more sense of depth. The depth is reduced because there's so much water and you only see part of the trees in the back. So that's just my thought. Maybe just change some of the angle on this. Might have made it even a stronger photo.
And the photographer is Anita Duprat. This is Mesquite Dunes of Death Valley.
I'm excited to get this one. I like this one. This could even be change their clothes, and this is like something out of like Star Wars or something like that. I personally really like small people in a big landscape. You didn't see any of that stuff in my presentation, but I shoot a lot of that kind of stuff. I think this works super well. Maybe, I don't know, the trick with the sand dunes is there's always someone walked on them. There's always something. I was gonna say, I wonder if a little bit more on the bottom would help or not, just in terms of pushing them even higher up. It just seems pinched on the top and the bottom. But there's probably reasons for that. I think it's got nice light, coming in, side light, lighting them up. They're super interesting subjects. You might be able to add some mid-tone contrast, some clarity, or a little black, and just bring out a little more of the texture in the sand, the what do you call it? The waves, I guess, the textures of the sand dunes themselves.
And the photographer is George Pelpel. This is Pastel Delight.
I like the soft lighting of this and the reflection. And in this case, they always talk about not having the horizon in the middle, but it works all right in this shot because of the reflection, equal reflection of the sky and the water. And I think the sky is so interesting, and the water reflects that, and having that thin horizon in the middle doesn't detract from it. I was just thinking it would have been interesting if you used a telephoto in here and just kind of brought the land and the mountain and the skies above it. But that would be a different shot. So it works well here. Maybe I would have liked a little bit more contrast to bring out some of the differences in the clouds and the rest of it. I don't know if you used a polarizer in here, but seems like a polarizer might have helped with here if it wasn't used.
And the photographer is Eleni Prusa. This is Acadia Mountain Sunset.
It's funny. I always play this game with a friend of mine, John, Hendrickson, who's kind of my mentor, looking through the Sierra Club calendars and things, trying to identify locations. And when I saw this, I was like, that's got to be Acadia. And I didn't know that till you just said that. But it's a place I've never been. I've always wanted to go. And looking at this is like a perfect composition of it, right? You've got a leading line of the rocks leading us into the frame. And you've got this water that's going from left to right, viewers left to right, leading us back. So it becomes this three-dimensional, almost curved S pattern leading us out into the distance. And we've got nice clouds as well. So it works really well. It's early or late light. So there's this nice side light coming in that's really saturated. It's hard to tell on small. It almost seems like it's sharper and more in focus on the front left than at the distance on the right. Like some of the trees on the right-hand side, halfway back on the water, seem like they're starting to go out of focus. I don't know if that's true or if it's just, zoom. So a strong image though.
And the maker is Henry Goodman. This is Dawn at White Sands National Park.
I think the composition here is interesting. The diagonal, the horizontal lines of the dune, and then the strong diagonal line, leading you from the right over to the left, and then the addition of the footsteps, kind of made it an interesting story. Normally, we see this with no footsteps, and it wouldn't be a great shot without the footsteps. But this is kind of like the story I'm thinking is of the footsteps, and the incursion into the dunes. And I like the fact that the other dune in the distance is lit well, and it kind of takes your eye back further, and there's a nice sense of depth to this image.
And the maker is Bernadette Sylvester. This is Wintertime in Washington.
Compositionally, I think this is super strong. This could easily be in a calendar or something like that. You've got the water coming from, can't see where I'm pointing, coming from the top left-ish down, pouring over the cascade mid-frame on the left, and then some going to the left, yes, but really the drama is moving to the right. So suddenly you've got this diagonal S kind of line going through the frame, which gives it a real three-dimensional feel. It really draws the viewer from because it's flowing, I feel like it draws more from the back to the front. A few critical things. I would say you could theoretically warm it up a little bit, maybe just in certain areas, warm up the white balance in certain areas, while keeping the water cooler, bringing up the whites in the water, to kind of like create a little bit of color contrast between the two. And one could debate whether or not the rock in the front left being out of focus, it doesn't bother me. I think some people would think it matters, but I don't think so, because the strongest, biggest rock, the one in the middle right, is in focus, and it should be, because that's like the subject with the water moving around it.
The photographer is John Sievert. This is Kebler Pass Sunrise.
Here's a good example of foreground interest and depth, because the foreground is so prominent here with the I guess is it snow or something, the ice on the water, and it really has a strong sense of foreground and the middle area and the background. I'd like to see a little bit of the shadows open in the mountains in the mid area, because there's so much interest in the front. I'd like to see that open at the same time. I think some of the highlights of the mountains in the back could have been taken down a little bit. Maybe use just a little bit of the darkening of the blue sky as well.
And the photographer is Michael Quinn. This is Athabasca Falls Jasper National Park.
Mm-hmm. Super cool situation. I like that it's a small view with the falls in the background. I would say my first impression is that what I'm seeing is a little bit dark. We want that water to be white, not, a tone below white, if you're talking zone system and things like that. But so you could bring up the exposure a bit, and that would help with the rock and the grass and whatever the stuff in the moss in the foreground. And it may need some white balance adjustments as you're doing that. I would also ask the question, and maybe it's windy and this isn't an option. Could you have, because I think it's a very strong composition, diagonal leading in, diagonal coming down, the rock sticking out. But could you have done a long shutter speed and turned that water into more of like a blurred cascade? And that's way more, there's no right or wrong answer. That's way more like artistic interpretation of the scene type of thing. So.
Photographer is Willie Hall. This is A New Day at Lake Francis.
There's a good sense of depth here with the foreground rocks and the nice reflections in the water and the atmospherics. I like the island is balanced off to the left with the foreground to the right. I'm always thinking of angles, and if there was, I don't know if there was anything more interesting in the foreground, but a little lower angle to maybe give a little possibly more depth. I don't know if there was any more interest in the right, but nice image.
And the maker is Jonathan Beth. This is Sunset at Kapalua Bay.
I want to go there. That's pretty much, and that's the sign of a good photo right there, right? It draws the viewer in. They want to go. They're like, where is that? That looks cool. There's really not a lot of critique that I could make to this, except like, well, yeah, if there was an even more dramatic sunset or sunrise, whichever it is, I don't know. Things like that are completely out of the person's control. You could theoretically maybe use a graduated filter and just darken the sky a little bit. It might make it pop a bit more, but really, I mean, compositionally, you got this perfect, nice curve starting in the left, going around, curving, and then working our way all the way to the right frame. You still bring the water right to the edge, but you don't lose it, which is great. And then you're working this diagonal line back up, which then diagonally crosses over to the land on the back, goes over to the clouds, the sunset clouds. It makes this nice circle that really keeps your eye in there. I mean, this would easily run like double page spread in a magazine. It's good. Put a fold right down the middle. It would work really well.
And the photographer is Rachel Rosenberg. We're into night photography. And there's one, and it's overlooking Telluride.
So this is obviously a very dramatic night shot with the Milky Way and the city lights. I found myself though that the city lights were so dramatically bright, and the trees were lit so well that it was too much drama. It looked too much like you lit the trees purposefully, and the city lights were so bright. I was left wanting to see detail. I guess I'm a little bit of a stickler. I like to see some development in those dark shadow ranges. I think it would have made the drama even more. I guess it would have made it more believable for me. But it's a very nice dramatic shot.
The photographer is Michael Quinn. Now we're in the people category, and the first one is Christina.
I think this works really, really well. Compositionally, she's filling the frame. You haven't clipped anything off. And there's an interesting example, right? It's projected on a black background, which makes it work even better, right? Because in a sense, the whole screen is the stage. So that works really well. So being conscious of how your image is going to be shown. Are you going to print it? What kind of matting would you use? Those kinds of things do make a difference, as you can see here. I mean, she's sharp. She's in focus. You've got good eye contact. I mean, maybe depending, maybe a little bit closer, like straight into the camera, but that maybe sometimes doesn't work. It doesn't look good. I mean, there's really nothing technically wrong with it. One could argue that, yeah, her feet are not quite sharp. Her hands are blurred. But I think that's good in the silks or whatever, because it's showing motion. I like that. Her face is sharp, and that's what matters.
Photographer is Mike Shea. This shot gives
the perfect sense of like summertime, waiting in lines. I think that, it's nice to capture I especially like the person with the hands on their hips and the people walk all around them. And I like it that the photographer included, not, they just didn't focus on the people in the line, but they give us a sense of place and what's going on with the Kiwanis signs and the chicken fries and all that around. So that worked well. I think the only thing I would have done is probably move a little bit to the right so the pole and the flag didn't come out of the person's head standing there. Otherwise, nice shot.
And the photographer is Jim Bear. This is face painted.
I think with this one, I think it's more of a post-production thing that I would really look at in terms of, I would burn the top part in, darken that top part, and really, even around maybe a full vignette, really, but drawing the subject, drawing the focus more towards the face, the eyelashes, that kind of thing, because I think you have a really strong, nice curved composition, but because of tonal differences, it's not drawing us in as much as it could. So there's nothing technically wrong. It's more just a matter of, and I don't think it matters that the hair is not fully in focus up on top, because the subject is her face, right? The drawing on the face, the face painting. So yeah, try vignetting or burning in a little bit or something like that.
And this is by Gary Kartstaffner. Now, photojournalism category, the first one is in 80 days.
So this power hang glider, I think there's, so oftentimes, so many times photos are miscategorized, but this one is great, photojournalism. I love the silhouette, the fact that the power hang glider, and it looks kind of like the birds are almost following them the way that it's shot. And so it kind of begs for the story, where was this? And it fits the photojournalism category well. And I like the fact that it's nice, strong silhouette. Yeah, great
The
job.
photographer is Eleni Prusa. This is Wedding at Horseshoe Bend.
I think I enjoyed this one, because as a photojournalism thing, there's clearly a story here. And that's what a good photo, like I said before, draws us in. We want to know, what's the story? Who are these people? What's going on with them? Why are they here? Why are they getting married? We assume married here. One of the things, and depending on the situation, this may not be possible, but one of the things I would look for is there a way I could tell more of a story of the place? Because we know they're on cliffs, but having been to Horseshoe Bend, there's this really dramatic view down below, right? And so is there a way that you could move around? And if they're just people that you don't know, it's harder to be, at some point you're very obvious and maybe you need to ask permission. But could you give more of a sense of place, and or shoot it tighter? Because, once we've got the red rock, do we need all of the red rock unless it's, adding to the story? So, yeah.
Photographer is John Sievert. This is The Light of My Life at White Sands, New Mexico.
It was nice composition with the subject in the left third. I think that, maybe selecting a little, I don't know what the settings were, but maybe a little higher f-stop number might give a little sharper rays to the sun, and while darting it a little bit, it might result in a little more silhouette, but I don't think that would have hurt. I find it enjoyable. I like the fact that the photographer is looking to the right and we have room to the right. I don't know if we need all of that room to the right, though. Maybe a square format might have worked well in this one and cropped a little bit off to the right because the interest is all the way over to the left side.
The photographer is Ed Sylvester. This is Fun Wild Training.
So I would say compositionally, I almost wish there was a little bit more space in front. I don't think you really want to cram them farther to the right in order to do that. So I would almost want to see a little bit looser cropping, which is usually rare. Usually I feel like mostly I always am like, oh, we need to be tighter. But just gives them a little more space. And I would look to see, with the horse's head down, really his eyes are leading us to something on the ground, which probably isn't actually there, but it sort of makes it look like he's looking at something on the ground. And it makes me want to go, what is he looking at? But we can't see the spot he's theoretically looking at. I think she's just got the reins pulled really tight, but from a diagonal line off the horse's face, it seems like just a little more space in the front. But it's nice and sharp. It's got a good background. You could try to give it a little bit more black, perhaps, or mid-tone contrast, clarity. It might make it pop a little bit more too.
And the photographer is Jonathan Beth. This is PG&E working on Restoring Power, December 28th, 2021.
Oh, this is
Story of our lives.
To bring back ugly memories of 12 days. But it's a great photojournalism shot. I like the edgy highlights around the worker's face and around the lights. I like the mixture of the different color temperatures and the blue lighting, emphasizing the cold snow on the trees to the left. It's a great photojournalism story. What can I say? You could write a lot about this.
That could easily run in the union.
Yeah, give us all PTSD while we're at it. And the maker is Douglas Hooper. This is Anna capturing the essence of the horses.
I think it works really well. Whether it's wildlife or a person, it's kind of the same concept here. She's really isolated in front of that background, right? She's got space to shoot, space to look. There's this nice little tree here on the side that's kind of framing it. So it works really well. My only thought would be, because there's none that I can see any technical issues, exposure wise. You could tone down the background in comparison with her, but I don't think that's more of just an artistic style thing. My only question would be, would it be possible to have us see what she's actually photographing? Because she's photographing something, and it does leave a question in my mind. And maybe that's the point too, though, because by not showing it, it allows us to use our imagination. We can fill in whatever we want to be photographing. But theoretically, if we could see what she's photographing, that completes the story too.
And the maker is Shelby Cohen. Now we're into creative fantasy, anything goes.
That was the one I was talking about earlier.
Right. This is Here in the Black.
I really like the soft focus and the mystery of this. The fact that it's not sharp, the fact that it's got all these. It looks like an old film shot that was scanned or something, because we got all the specs on it and whatnot. And the shape of the person, it begs for a story. I love the vignetting of the natural vignetting of the trees and the lighting around the subject. I don't know, great sense of mystery. A wonderful photo.
Photographer is Ellen Davis.
It made me think, like, printed on a nice fiber-based paper. Like, it totally made me think of like an Alfred Stieglitz or something.
Ooh.
Oh,
This is Self-Expression on Rock.
Oh, that's mine. Sorry.
You got caught up in Ellen's.
I was like, is this a Douglas one? As I was like at the school flipping through these earlier, I was like, oh, I better change that one. I think it works really well in that there's this nice light, like side light coming in from the right. And it's not like so much from above, it's more like really truly side light. And I think that creates this texture. And then the farther to the left we go, the more things start to fade out. And then you have this color, which works really well, of all the graffiti and things like this. It's like a really interesting place. And then, she then also has, in a sense, the same matching. We can't tell, this distance exactly what it is, but she's matching because she's been graffitied in a sense. So it works really well.
And the maker is Douglas Hooper.
I was right.
And now we're into black and white. This is still standing.
I like the strong contrasts of what makes a good black and white is strong contrast here of the blacks and the whites. I think my only thought here is that the big cloud above in the upper left isn't as important to, at least from what I've seen. It's the tree and the sharp cloud opposite the tree in the lower center there. Maybe a little tighter shot around that. And the upper left doesn't contribute so much to me. And maybe tone down some of the highlights in the clouds to bring out some of the contrast in that cloud itself. But nice shot.
Okay. The photographer is Grace Farrig. This is Seaside Creek Beach.
I think this one works really, really well. I mean, we've got the people in kind of the bottom left. I think their shadows kind of leading even more to the left really work well. And then you've got this S line going out in the distance, so it gives it a real three-dimensional feel. Then you've got the silhouette of the rock on the right and the horizon line. Horizon line doesn't quite look level, I just realized. And then you've got some detail in the rocks on the left. My thought would be, yeah, fix the horizon line. But I wonder if you were to mess with the blue channel, traditionally, with blue skies, by removing the blue, it becomes more of a black. That would be more of like the traditional Ansel Adams style of printing. It might make that sky like pop even more. So try removing blue in your color mix. See what that does.
And the photographer is Dave McClellan. This is Big Sky.
I don't like the angle, the sky angle with the big vignette around it. The dark contrast gives a real ominous mood to the shot. And I like it that it's this kind of a square format. Nicely done.
And the photographer is Dave Arstein. This is Hawkstorm.
I remember looking at this earlier today and going, man, that is a killer cloud. Like if only you could call that cloud up every time you needed it when you're shooting a landscape. So I would say you could probably trim some off the top, because to me, the story is the nest, which might be an eagle nest. I'm not totally sure. It kind of looks like it's got a whiter tail, but I can't tell at this distance. But making it tighter. Do we need all that space above and on the right and the left? Because really the story, and you might even be able to bring a little bit off the ground too, because the story is the cloud, the bird, the nest. So maybe tightening that a little bit.
And the maker is Chris Schiller. This is Horses of the Flying Bee #3.
I like the art of this, the mane of the two horses, or the neck line of the two horses. I like the sharp focus in front, and then you have this mimicking of the neckline with the hills and the diagonal lines with the hills in the back. I think if that was the intention, it makes for a nice kind of artistic photo. You could have even done just the two necks themselves with a smaller square, but I think it works well. There's a lot you could play with here, but nice artistic shot.
And the photographer is Chris Schiller. This is America at 75 miles per hour winter series.
I think this is kind of going into that more of like the traditional style of black and white printing or editing, in that it's like pretty high contrast. You got some good blacks in there, you got some good whites, so it has a pretty good tonal range. I wonder compositionally if you maybe trimmed off some of the top not quite all the way down to that last top lighter line of clouds. Just because I think right now we're kind of struggling with like, well, is the foreground the subject or the sky? And to me, the foreground is the story. The sky is helping the story, but it's really the strength of the foreground. So you could lose the top, whatever, like 20% or something like that, I think, and it would make it even more draw your eye to the foreground. It's got great detail.
And the maker is Ingrid Lockhart. Now we're in the color category. And this one is Fiesta de las Flores, Otavalo, Ecuador.
I love the woman on the right, kind of waving the victory sign over there. Kind of helps add to the story. I think the only thing that, it's obviously very colorful. I was thinking that if the photographer had knelt down a little bit and off to the left, aiming at the woman on the right and the two women, you could have gotten a nicer, a fuller set of colors shooting from that angle, from the lower left shooting towards the woman with the victory sign. And she could have been, the draw with the colors in front. That's my only thought with this one. Nice shot.
The photographer is Ann Westling. This is Yellow Lichen.
I enjoyed this one because we've got this juxtaposition of like the square and the circle and multi-circles, things like that. I think, and it's lit well. It could be warmed up. I can't quite tell if that's a cold flashlight or just, you could warm it up slightly, I guess would be the thing with white balance. The critique I would give is I would crop it tighter. So here's the thing. Hopefully you actually have a wider version and you could adjust the perspective so it becomes the same width at the top as the bottom, because right now the bottom is narrower because of the perspective of the camera to the subject. And when you do that, then that would allow you to make a completely square crop out of it. So then you don't have the the little top left corner and the bottom right corner, these little distractions. Because I think it's not an abstract, but it's sort of an abstract. It's got great color, it's got great shape. I think just adjusting the cropping would make it awesome. And it could even be a black and white too. Both of them would be great.
The photographer is Patricia Leviton. And this is nice paint job.
I think this has a nice sense of complementary colors with the browns and the hills of the sky. I think the car is interesting, but I would have liked, I think it would have been more interesting, since you have the bush in this, if we move to the left and maybe over toward looking more at the front of the car and moving the bush off to the right, because the bush isn't doesn't add so much to the story. You could have even have cropped, I think, the bush out a little bit and had the environment of the car in the desert and the mountains in back of it. That's my only thinking of this one. It's nice, it's centered, but the bush, I think, competes with the car, and the car in the desert and the mountains, I think, are the story for me.
And the maker is Janice Rossner. And that concludes tonight's show. Thank you both, David and Josh, very much for being critiquers. You did a wonderful job. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks you guys.
Oh,
I'll stick around if other people have questions. But I did want to ask Douglas, was that Wildcat Hill? Was that where that one, your photo that won?
Oh, yes, it was in Carmel.
Okay, that's actually his actual house, right?
Yeah, that's actually
that's cool.
Edward Weston's desk, camera, house.
That's awesome.
I did have a question for Janice. The shot with the leopard and the prey, did that end up eating I'm assuming it ended up eating the prey in the shots afterwards.
I don't think she's here.
Oh, she's not here?
She texted me, she was in Munich headed to Greece.
Oh my God, I
Oh my
can't,
God, really?
I can't keep track.
Life is good, I guess, Bert. She's gonna shoot pelicans,
Oh, geez.
Dolomite pelicans or something like that in Greece.
Oh my God.
It's like something crazy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Folks,
folks, I had a
Turkey, but
question for Kathy. So we had no entries in the 2 new categories.
no,
Beginner
we did
and-
not.
We did, okay, just to double check. Okay.
But you know what? I'm not worried because we may get some next month. We sort of did it late.
Right.
So
Okay, just
That was
checking.
last minute. Maybe we need to announce those.
yeah, at the next meeting for sure.
How about
Oh, wait, this is the meeting.
announcing?
I
it
did
now?
send out an announcement.
Yeah, but people don't read.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I'll just say it now really quickly. We did add the board for the photo categories for 2022, deleted the category not critiqued, which was category 15. And we added 2 new categories, a beginner and phone, images taken with your phone. So next month for February, take a look at those and see if your images might fit into those 2 new categories. So, all right, with that, just a reminder then, as we close things out, first, thank you to Josh for your wonderful presentation and for critiquing, and thank you to David Wong for critiquing. Very, very nice of you. Lovely, well done. And then our next meeting is February 28th. And you'll have a chance to vote for the images that David and Josh critiqued until Friday night, midnight, February 25th. So the Friday night before our meeting on Monday. And I will have the video of tonight's meeting uploaded in the next few days up on the club's website under meeting videos with a short
I
gap
did have-
after critique. So,
I do have one announcement I meant to make earlier.
Okay.
I had somebody drop out of my Ireland one trip because of their eyes, and their cataract surgery is interfering. So if I have one opening for a single person, if you'd like to join us. Ireland has lowered their requirements. They only are now asking for just that you be vaccinated, no negative COVID tests or any of those things. So all you have to do is be vaccinated, and you're free to explore all of Ireland with us in mid-April. Anyway.
super.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. I'm going to stop the recording here.